Among the most important lessons that my mom taught me as a child, I want to share with you today. There's a lot of wisdom and experience that we're able to learn from the generations before us. I know there's so many lessons that my mom taught me that has really shaped who I am today, and much of my character, much of the things that I do, much of who I am is largely been influenced by the principles and the values and the things that my mom has taught me. There's a lot of things that, growing up, there's a lot of challenges we went through, but I'm very grateful for some key lessons that God taught me. And today I want to share with you some of one of the most important things that God taught me that has drastically impacted how I interact with each other, how I work in ministry, how I understand my life calling, and this one lesson that I believe will be of value to you, that I believe that many people are struggling with, and they go through this challenge. And so today I want to impart this to you and share with you kind of my testimony of how my mother was able to instill this valuable lesson in me. But first, my name is Enoch, and here at the Army of Youth, we are passionate about helping young people to identify their unique talents and to dedicate them to Lord's service. So if this is something that interests you, I encourage you to subscribe, to follow us, hit the notification so you can get more messages just like this. So one of the major lessons that Mom taught me, it was in this little children's storybook. It was it was a Christian book. It was from this guy named Max Lucado, and it was a story of Punchinello. Punchinello, I was looking it up today. I'm like, what does Punchinello even mean? And according to the dictionary, the archaic definition is a Punchinello is someone who is ugly, who's kind of stout, who's just difficult to look at. Maybe they're grotesque, or just you look at them and you kind of cringe. You're like, ugh, that person's an eyesore. It's painful to see them. That's a Punchinello, which I didn't know that, but I just remember that Mom loved this children's book, and she read it to me as a child. She read it again and again and again, and there was really, she didn't read to me a lot growing up. She didn't read to me a bunch of stories or different things, but there was this one book that was just a burden on her heart to just share with me, and honestly, I think she read it for herself sometimes, even more than she read it for me, but I do remember it very distinctly, and I had an epiphany recently, realizing that she brought it up again. She's like, remember that one book? I'm like, yeah, and then I saw the pictures. I was like, oh, it's flipping through memory lane, because I'm like, whoa, this was a deep, meaningful, moving part of my childhood. And I'm like, I haven't seen this for years, over a decade, and I'm like, this is amazing. And as I reread it again, and I came in contact again with the lesson, I was like, oh, this has shaped deeply my character of who I am today and the decisions that I have made throughout my lifetime. And I was like, this is incredible. So I'm excited to share with you the story of Punchinello. It goes like this. You could look up YouTube videos. They got some animated versions of it now. You can get the book. It's really fun. It's interesting. But here is Punchinello, and he's like a little puppet, and he's a puppet man, and he lives in this world of gimmicks. And in these gimmicks, there's a lot of different people, but the issue with these gimmicks is they're always comparing themselves with each other. And if someone was very beautiful, or someone was very talented, they had a gift, or they were just really attractive, then people would give them these little gold stars. And they're like, oh, they'd see someone juggling and with this beautiful white smile, and they're like, oh, let me give you a star. And they're giving people these stars. They see people talented and gifted or looking all pretty, and they're like, I'm going to put some stars on you. And so they put these labels on them, and then there's someone who looked kind of dorky, or maybe they had some flaws, or they were chipped in their puppets, and people would look at them like, ugh, let me give you a little gray dot. And they're like, I'm going to give you a gray dot. And then there's some people that just because they had a bunch of gray dots, people would walk up to them like, I'm going to give you some more gray dots. And there was all of this, just everybody had gold stars or gray dots. And if people didn't like you, they'd give you more gray dots. And if you were really bright and smart or likable, then they'd give you more gold stars. And everybody had them. And Punchinello, he would walk through, and people just gave him gray dots, and he was kind of down. Like, he tried to do something good to get a gold star, and then he'd make a mistake, and at first he'd like look, people were like, oh yeah, and then he'd trip and fall, and then people were like, ugh, and they'd give him a bunch of gray dots, and he's just like, doesn't matter what I can do, it's like I can never get these gold stars, like what is, and he just felt so disappointed, till one day he met this lady, and I forgot her name, it starts with an L, so I'm going to call her Lucia. And he met, let's say her name was Lucia, and met her, and she didn't have any gray dots or gold stars. And they're like, whoa. And because she didn't have anything, people gave her a gray dot. And it just fell off. And Punchinello was like, what? These stickers, they don't stick on you. And some people would see, it's like, oh, you don't have anything. Here, let me give you a gold star. And they would like fall off. And Punchinello was fascinated with this lady because here he is covered with gray dots, and he's unhappy with himself and life, and he's just like, what am I doing? And why don't these stickers stick to you? Everybody else has either gray dots or gold stars, but you have nothing. Why? What is your secret? And Lucia was like, well, that's a good question. Come meet me over at this address tomorrow, and I will show you. And so Punchinello's like, I gotta go. So tomorrow they show up, and he's at this house, and Lucia's like, here, I want to introduce you to the woodworker. He's like, who's that? And so they go into this home, and it is this children's storybook. It's so neat, where you see like little Punchinello, and he's like the size of like a puppet, and there's this big house, this door, and he just kind of cracking his door open, he's peeking his head through, and he's like, kind of like, should I be in here? And then he hears this booming voice, Punchinello! And he's like, huh? He's like, who are you? He's like, I'm Eli. And he's like, well, how do you know my name? He's like, well, what do you mean? He's like, I'm the woodworker. I created you. I formed you. I'm the one who made you. And he's like, oh. He's like, what brings you to my shop today? Punchinello was like, well, I saw Lucia, and she doesn't have any dots, and I want to know, why doesn't she have any dots? And Eli, this big man, and he looks so friendly, and he puts Punchinello on his lap, and he says, well, you see, Punchinello, she doesn't have any dots or stars because she spends time with me, and she knows, and as she spends time with me, those dots don't stick to her. And likewise for you, you are very special in my eyes. I created you. I know who you are, and I shaped you, and I formed you just the way that I wanted you. And there is nothing that needs to change. There's nothing, doesn't matter what anybody else thinks of you. You are mine, and you are very special, and I love you just the way that you are. And Punchinello's like, what? He's like, never heard this before. And he's like, listen, Punchinello, if you spend time with me every day, if you come visit me in my shop, then you too will no longer be able to have those stickers that will stick to you. It doesn't matter what other people stick on you. It will fall off of you as well. And Punchinello was like, me? Could this be true? And he's like, yes, just come visit me and you will see. He's like, okay. And he had this renewed joy and hope for the future. He's like, wow. And the story ends. The last page, you could see that just as Punchinello is leaving the woodworker's shop, there's a little gray dot that just fell off and bounces on the floor. And the story is, as you can imagine, it's quite incredible. And it's so inspiring because Eli is the name God in Hebrew. And that is, he's a symbol of the one who created us. And in like manner, a lot of times I believe that we have a tendency of wanting to compare ourselves to others, a tendency of wanting to be accepted of others, or trying to please those around us so that they see us and they accept us and we belong, or that just we want the approval of men. But the most important and most beautiful thing is you can be approved of God. You can please Him. And when you really understand that you are special just the way that you are. Jesus said, all that the Father has sent to me, all that come unto me, I will in no wise cast out. Just as you are, you can go to God. And as Jeremiah 31:3 says, I have loved you with an everlasting love. Therefore, with loving kindness, I have drawn you. that God cares about you, and He created you, and He knows what you need. And as long as we are comparing ourselves to other people, we will fall short of their expectations, but we can live up to the expectations of God. And the lesson that I guess, as I look in hindsight, that my mother drilled in me is to really recognize that, hey, it doesn't matter what other people are thinking of you. It matters that you know you're special and that you are loved. And that's one thing that my mom taught me growing up. I never really questioned if she loved me. I knew that she was relentless in her love for, even after all the stuff that I put her through, and the rebellion and the broken hearts. It's like, wow, my heart goes out to her for how much she patiently endured with me. But one thing that she taught me in forming my character as a child is that I should do what God has called me to do, and irrespective of what other people's opinions and their ideas and their judgments and with their expectations, do what just to follow my dreams and follow what matters most to me. And that lesson, I realize, has been so valuable, so helpful, because a lot of times I've been having to face whether I'm going to go down the path of the majority, which are often on the broad way to destruction, what Jesus said in Matthew 7, or go on the narrow way, where there are few that find it, that leads to life. And sometimes it's not easy to go against the curve or go against others, and sometimes they think because you're not doing what they're doing, that you're doing something wrong. But I realize that just because someone's doing something doesn't mean it's better, just doesn't mean that I have to do that. God has a unique place for me, and it matters that I'm doing my part. And in like manner, God has a plan for your life. God has given you unique skills, unique abilities, unique life, and He has a calling upon your life that only you can fill. It doesn't matter what other people are doing, their skills, their talents, their abilities. That doesn't excuse you from using your unique talents and dedicating them to His service. And it's only when we fully surrender to Him and His plan and His love and His life, that is when we will find greater strength and greater connection to Him. And the judgments and opinions of others, these things can fall off of us. They don't have to stick to us. If other people criticize you, it doesn't change who you are in Christ and who God thinks of you. So this is among the most important lessons that my mother taught me, and I'm really grateful for that, because it shaped who I am today and what I do today. I don't believe I would be standing here today if it was not for those lessons that my mom taught me through that book. And I hope that I could impart this to you and encourage you as well. And I'm curious. Let me know in the comments, what is a major lesson that your father or your mother has taught you that has shaped your character? I would love to hear from you what principle, what lesson has been very distilled in you that you're grateful for. And if you want to better understand who you are, your identity, and have a deeper connection with God and better understanding of your life calling, and know how you can draw closer to Christ and have more awareness of your unique gifts and your abilities and the direction that God is calling you in your life, then I want to share that we have put together this Live Your Calling Daily Account Book. This is a special book designed just for you, to help you to understand, to spend that quality time with the Lord. Every morning you can have a conversation that's biblically based, that helps you to ask these questions that will draw you closer to understanding the specific will of God and maintaining that connection with Him, so all the judgments and opinions and the stickers of others will no longer stick to you. And there's an evening examination where you could search your heart and understand how the Lord has been leading you in your life. And there is at the beginning a full life assessment. There's a whole life assessment where you could understand more of where you stand in 10 of the major areas of life that the Word of God speaks about, that have been scientifically and biblically proven, that leads to a fulfilling life, to where you're not just going throughout life trying to please others and always trying to live up to other people's expectations, but so that you can understand more of what does God expect of you, and so you can live your calling. If you would like to get a copy of this daily account book, I'd encourage you to go to the website thearmyofyouth.com/account book, and you can pick up your copy today. That's again thearmyofyouth.com/account book. and you can grab you could order yours today. And I thank you so much for watching. If you thought this was a blessing, then share this with someone else. Who do you know that could be encouraged by learning this message that you are special and that you are unique and God loves you? Go tell it to the world, and remember that God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called.